as Yeshua, Jesus said, seeking you shall find, knocking it shall be open to you. He didn't say sit on your ass and I'll come to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is the Carganilla Online Variety Entertainment Podcast. Leading off, your host, Paul Carganilla.
Hello and welcome to COVE. This is the online variety show and podcast in which we aim to both entertain and inspire our podcast listeners and YouTube viewers with a variety of entertainment for you. We like to interview special guests, authors, actors, directors, producers. We'll have live readings. We'll do travel blogs and just all sorts of stuff aimed to entertain and inspire you as you go about your day here in your podcast feed. I'm Paul Carganilla. This is season 2 of COVE podcast. Welcome. And of course, we have a very special guest, an author that we have had on in the past. In season 1, we introduced him and his book, but we want to catch up with him and find out what he's been doing. And we've got so many questions from podcast listeners and our friends in the COVE podcast community that said, hey, he's coming back. I got a question. So we can't wait to chat with him. But before we do that, of course, we have to bring in our producer of the podcast, producer Craig Jackman. How have you been, Craig?
Oh my gosh, lots of great things going on. This is going to be an exciting podcast. I'm really looking forward to seeing Krishnanand again and hearing what he has to share with us.
Yes, and if you didn't see episode 11 in season 1, I'll just let you know a little bit about him. Author Krishnanand is a 6-time award-winning author of 5 books, several workbooks, and hundreds of magazine editorials. His work ranges from a wide range of innovative self-help addiction solutions to short story fiction and a myriad of spiritual texts. His life has been a string of pearls and a crown of thorns, yielding phenomenal life experiences that have become 2 memoirs. One's called A Stone's Throw. He's won 4 awards for, and it tells a raw and moving account of his early life involved with criminals and hardcore drugs in LA. Within the Portal is an epic triumph over tragedy and becoming a 3 times medical miracle, and his time spent on the other side from his near-death experience of 9 days in a coma and his ongoing connection with the angelic akashic agents that he encountered. He's now semi-retired from private practice counseling to fully dedicate himself to his author career. And let's find out what he's been up to lately. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming author Krishnanand. Welcoming back, I should say. Hello, sir.
Good morning. What an introduction. Wow. The guy does his homework. He's got my book there. That's rare.
Oh.
I never get treated this well. I'm kind of going like, I'm not used to this.
Well, it's so great to have you back. I'm so glad you got back in touch, and we're continuing this conversation that seems like it could go on, for generations, really. But your story is so inspirational, so phenomenal, so inspiring. And for anyone who hasn't heard it, producer Craig, stick around. We want to talk to you too for a sec.
Okay.
For anyone who hasn't heard your
Yeah,
story.
man. Once I show you don't leave, that's going to make me feel weird.
Okay, sorry. I'm excited for this.
Yeah.
This is going to be a very good episode.
When we talked about what led to your first book, or I'm sorry, not your first book, but Within the Portal, in our first conversation, we learned about your story and how it all came to be. For anyone who hasn't yet listened to that episode, can you give us like a nutshell version of your experience, what brought you to that other side, and what has happened since?
Sure. And I might add that, yes, I've got 2 memoirs, and that's not intentional. I hope that I don't have content in my life for another 3rd one. The first one almost killed me. The second one did kill me, and so I don't need a 3rd one.
Right.
So, but they say, right, as an author, which I already was and have been throughout my life, you write what you know. And, and when I find extraordinary experiences, I had to look at my own life because you quoted me. My life has been a string of pearls and a crown of thorns. So that's a quote from my book there, that, yes, indeed, the events and miracles that I've experienced and survived have done both. String of pearls because they're absolute, validated, definitive miracles that are documented. And crown of thorns because it does make it difficult, challenging at times to manage and coexist within the material world as a very spiritual kind of being. It's like you're in a little bit of a loop, you know. So anyway, thank you. So briefly, I will tell you, and it's hard to do it briefly. It is a big event. You held up that book. It's a heavy book, isn't it?
It is, yes.
It's a big, heavy book because I was told by the akashic-agents, thank you for referring to them properly, I mean, I was like, you know, what should I take out? What should I not include? And the akashic-agents were speaking to me and saying, shut up. This story does not belong to you. It's not about you. And tell the story as it happens. And sure enough, everyone gets something different out of it. So the death event was that I'm in my corner office. I'm a private practice counselor, which I started from absolutely nothing, just wanting to help people, became very good at it. It was very successful. And suddenly I had 3 clients that day text me to reschedule. I think it was 4 actually. And that rarely happens. I mean, occasionally 1 or so, but 3 or 4 in a row, suddenly I was like, what am I going to do? I got nothing to do. I didn't bring any extra work in the office. So I decided that I rode my motorcycle to work that day, which is a very unusual bike from Italy, very unusual, unique bike to own. And for the first time in 7 years in that office, I decided that I'd go up and get a physical, which I hadn't done in a while. It was just a routine kind of thing. But I got some time on my hands to go up to the clinic and get a physical. Went down in the parking garage, got on my bike. For the first time in 7 years in that office, I exited the garage and turned right instead of left. The left turn into town was quiet side streets into town. The right turn was boulevards, intersections. 7 years, never did after, never did since, never to this day, don't know why I turned right instead of left. And a few blocks later, as I ease out to make a left turn, because I was the only guy in my left turn lane, I had a green arrow just for me. As I ease out to make a left turn, a guy went through the light, going maybe 5 miles an hour, and that's it. Went through the light, hit me in the face, killing me instantly. And the miracles begin. On the corner was a guy in front of a tire store on his cell phone. He was a pastor. He figured God put him there for a reason. He ran over to the scene. People were yelling at him, stop, don't move him. Some help is on the way. He figures God put him there for a reason. Now, the only reason he was there is because his daughter convinced him to go to help her get tires on her car. He was totally reluctant the whole time, then suddenly gave in. So everything kind of happens for all these reasons. So he pulled my body from the wreck, and I was bleeding from my nose, my eyes, my mouth, my eyes. That's kind of scary. And I was dead, being reading my last rites, Our Father who art in heaven, etc., etc. On the other corner is a Jack in the Box restaurant. At the front of the drive-through line, not in the back, in the front of the drive-through line, 2 paramedics getting lunch, waiting for their lunch. If they wanted tacos instead of burgers that day, I wouldn't be here. Had they been in the back of that line today, I wouldn't be here. They were on the scene in a second to bring my body back to life. My mind, my chitta, my consciousness had catapulted the moment of impact. I was like, fuck this, I'm out of here. And I catapulted. I went to the other side immediately. I was like, I didn't do the out of body hovering around. I was like, I don't need to be here at all. So I was already gone. So I said they brought my body back to life. I was in a stage 3 Glasgow coma. Now my son is a firefighter EMT. Let me tell you, he knows what a stage 3 is. His son was with death. Literally, EMTs, when you're in a stage 3, they shrug their shoulders and say, we started this hard, it's up to God now. There's nothing they can do. It's one of the most severest stages of coma you can be in. I was in it for 9 days. The entire 9 days, I'm completely conscious and aware on the other side. And I mean fully aware, in peace, interacting with, having, you could say dialogue, and I say you say dialogue, you could say, because it was more telepathic, of course. And I'm having phenomenal events and experiences the entire time I'm there. And I wake up on my birthday. So we just get one after another. Now, let me back up a moment. As I change in my office to go to the clinic to get that physical, I change out of my office clothes and I put on some riding clothes that I had with me, that, and the t-shirt, which I would normally be wearing for an interview like this. The t-shirt I was wearing that day was from the Museum of Death. So we just have one thing after another, right? And again, I wish I was wearing, because here's the thing. That shirt was sheared off me by paramedics. It's completely tattered, right? And about a year ago, my editor for the book, she said, let me see it. And I sent her a picture of it. And she said, send it to me. I'm getting choked up. I love her so much. My editor's become a very, very dear friend. And she stitched the shirt back together and has like scars all over like Frankenstein's monster. It's absolutely beautiful. And I wear this thing sometimes when I ride my bike. And so of all the things, again, we've got paramedic on the corner, a pastor on the corner, all these events that continue. That waking on my birthday, the t-shirt that I was wearing. Now, my near-death experience did not end when I woke up from my coma. The first words out of my mouth to my loved ones were, "What are you doing in London?" When I say first words, let me back up a moment. I didn't know how to talk or walk when I woke up. Did not know who I was. Did not know what a hospital was. It was like I was an infant in a grown man's body that was laid up in a hospital, and I didn't know how to, I'm saying it was like my identity was completely deleted. I did not know. It's like I never learned how to talk or walk. The first words I tried to say were, "What are you doing in London?" Because I was experiencing multiple lifetimes at once. I was seeing everyone in identities, not as the people that I knew or their identities that they knew themselves as. I saw them as a string of identities from many lifetimes. So my last lifetime with the partner I was with and my son, we were in London. So I thought that's where we were. So I was kind of confused. They, of course, thought I was delusional. Who knows? Maybe I was. I got pretty massive brain trauma. So maybe I was all delusional. Maybe the whole thing is just a delusion. And so the brain trauma I had is called a DAI, diffuse axonal injury. Like the stage 3 Glasgow coma. If you Google this, you'll find it is literally the worst brain trauma known to science. My family was told that if I ever woke up, they were met by 2 doctors and a priest when they went to the hospital. Not a good sign.
Right.
And they were told if he ever wakes up, which he won't, they're just trying to ease them into this. If he does, he'll be a vegetable, and if he's not, he won't be able to ever take care of himself. That's how severe the brain trauma is, the DAI. No one has ever woke up. There's been like one person since the 1980s that woke up from one. So there's these clinical events going on. Now, after I wake up from my coma, and to this day, my contact, my connection with the akashic agents, as I refer to them, the spiritual beings on the other side, this continues consistently. It's never something that has ceased. Now, understand that as I experienced life preview, and I also got life review and life preview as well, and many other downloaded, uploaded knowledges in my mind, it was inferred to me by them that because of my prior work throughout my lifetime as a spiritualist and mystic, that I was receiving certain features of the NDE and other things that most people do not experience. And I'm not saying it was privilege. It was simply that it was what I was capable of, I guess, because I'd been a spiritual and mystic since I was a child. And I mean hardcore, seriously, scholar, student, practicing, following it. By the time this NDE occurs, I'd already been to India 5 times, up in northern India, to ashrams. I've been on spiritual paths all my life. A ceremonial magician. I'm a master alchemist. And so this wasn't like a spiritual awakening for me. This was one more spiritual event for me. So to this day, it continues. The miraculous events of my life, some great, some not so great, some harrowing, and all of them surreal. My life is definitely surreal. And again, it's fantastic. Even when it's kind of scary and hard, it's impossible to deny the miracle involvement, that there is a spiritual divine power that's involved with me on a way that's, I sometimes joke and say, I must be its plaything. It just seems to have some fun with me. And I think that the akashic agents, the impression I get is that they look at me and say, well, this guy, Krishnanand, he'll do it. He'll do anything. He's a lot of fun. He just keeps coming back for more. So my spiritual understanding and knowledge and practice, and again, it wasn't just that I acquired spiritual knowledge throughout my lifetime. I was practicing them. I was always somebody that was more than sampling. I was immersing myself in spiritual paths and practices to see what they had to offer. So I didn't want to just do it scholastically or academically. I wanted to see and experience them. So again, as an alchemist, you can't see it from where we are, but around the corner here, all my lab equipment is on display. I mean, I had a full alchemy lab, and everything that I was involved with, from ceremonial magic, Kabbalah, tarot, etc., were all methods and systems to develop my spiritual consciousness. So again, it continues to this day. I have a very intimate connection with spiritual forces, you could say. I mean, you could say dialogues. I mean, either I'm crazy and go having voices in my head, but there's no evidence of that because I live a very rational life. And so, I just at some point, there's a saying that I like. This was from the Ram Dass Be Here Now book. In the beginning, you do your sadhana, your spiritual practice, and in the end, sadhana is all you do. At some point, your life fuses. I can't find the line of separation between my spiritual life and my material life. They're both fused together, and so that's kind of the lump sum of it. Any questions or anything? Probably left stuff out. And now, if I may, real quick though. So the reason, again, that book is so big is because if you started reading it, you'll see it's just one event after another. It wasn't like it ever stopped. People think this like the event is behind me. It's ongoing. It's never stopped. And that book has become a spiritual training guide. People are looking to this book now and saying, this is teaching me how to be spiritual. And so we use this as a study book with my students now. And so again, it's giving you the ingredients, the tools, the practices, the right knowledge, and the way to apply these knowledges to be able to develop your spirituality and your spiritual consciousness.
I love it. And yeah, so we're excited to talk to you again. It's so every time we hear your story, I get goosebumps, and it's just amazing to hear the series of miracles that you have experienced. We have some questions from people who heard the first episode that you were on for you. I have some questions myself. But first, I want to hear, we last spoke, I believe, in July, last summer. And so as you continue on this journey, is there anything that you want to update us on, or any new chapters that have begun in the past 8 months?
Yes, and thank you so much for even considering that and asking. So we spoke in July, which is when I moved here. So I'm not going to give away the ending. I don't know if you've read it. I don't know where you've read. I'm not going to spoil anything, but the last chapter is called Prophecy. And I'm not prophesizing for the world. I'm not Nostradamus, wacky, weird, whatever. It's a prophecy is about my life and my life preview. The life preview that I received while I was on the other side, which was horrifying, much of it, and the visions and akashic agent communication that I had of what I could expect and should be pursuing in the future. And in that chapter, for example, I was in the middle of writing a whole other book. I mean, I was already 80% done with it. A huge book on spiritual paths and religions of this world through fictional narratives that were absolutely fun and amazing. And I was 80% done with that. Akashic agents came into my mind, came into my 4:00 in the morning kind of thing, as they often do, and said, usually they're making suggestions. It was, stop writing that and write your memoir. And I'm like, I don't argue, I don't ask why, I just do as I'm told in a spiritual way, right? And so I asked if I could consult some mystical modalities to get instructions on how to proceed, publishing, etc. And they said, sure. And I asked because I don't use psychic things for material or spiritual reasons. I don't agree with that. I'm not against it or anything like that. It's just that that's not what they're for. And so I consulted it, and the prophecies were all there. I mean, the readings and everything I was doing was just like bang, 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 and telling me you're going to and you should be moving back to California. I was in Austin, Texas at the time at an ashram, back to California. These and detailed a string of things that should be happening in the very near future. And again, I was looking into how I should proceed to make those come to fruition. Well, again, no spoilers, but they continue to happen. I mean, everything that's in that book, I'm documenting it through videos and other kinds of journals to document the fact that everything that's prophesied in this book that was written almost a year ago now is taking place. And the main thing is just that I'm getting choked up because I feel so blessed that I'm their plaything. That it was suggested, told, advised to me that I've always kind of figured that I would be something of a mystical spiritual teacher. And so my students are now referring to me as their spiritual trainer. like we go to the gym to get a fitness trainer. And a fitness trainer, what do? They listen to you, they look at you, they want to know what your goals are, and then they help you get the right knowledge and exercise and to live properly to attain that, right? So I'm a spiritual trainer. So basically what people do is I help them develop what their goals may be, whether it's mystical consciousness or spiritual or divine love or whatever it may be. And then I help them select the right systems to attain that. And so that's kind of what was told in the prophecy in a not too vague way. And sure enough, that's taking place. Again, people are using this book not just as an account of what had occurred, which it never was really intended to be just that anyway. It is a training manual. It gives you the knowledge, the information, the practices, the methods, how spirituality works and functions, what the mechanics are, the near-death experience phenomena, and how to apply these things so we can develop ourselves spiritually and be able to grow and continue. And I'll tell you, most of the students that come to me, Paul, they've had the dark night of the soul. And that's why they respond to me. Because the most often what I hear is that why they chose me to learn from is because I'm authentic, I'm genuine, and I'm not shy about, I think we're all in the dark night of the soul, and we should be. And it's not pleasant, it's not rosy and fun. As a matter of fact, I quote Dark Night of the Soul at the beginning of the book. And that we long for spiritual union, not just knowledge and awareness, but we long for spiritual union to be able to merge our consciousness and have a oneness, a unity with spirituality and divinity. And this is possible and attainable. And the gurus, sages, and masters of our histories have laid out all the ways to do this. They keep coming and telling us all this. And so it gets harder and harder to find in a YouTube, Twitter generation, but the knowledge is there. And that's kind of what I am, is I'm here to lead people to the right knowledges, the ones they can rely on that are true and genuine. So that's kind of what's changed, is I have a handful of students and I'm continuing that work. We're using the book and I'm promoting these kind of things. And it's all, by the way, on a sliding scale. I have students that, honestly, I shouldn't say this out loud because I want to encourage it, can't give me anything. And they're attentive and they're in need. And I'm not going to turn my back on them. I have some that give my full professional fee, and some that, and most that pay somewhere in between. And the bottom line is they get access to everything I have. The audiobook and ebooks, I can pretty much give them away as part of their class and course. The paperbacks, I can't give them away because it costs money to produce, as you know. But what they get is everything that I have to give, I'm giving. Everything I can give you, I'm going to give. And people give me what they can. And so that's the exchange. And it's very fulfilling and it's wonderful. I mean, to see people experience the exact intent of this book and this project is that I'm seeing people so quickly go from what they sense they were being kind of misled with material versions of spirituality to something that's authentic and genuine, seeing like, oh my God, this just makes sense. This is like, it's so obvious. The original masters. Why would we take these modern versions when we can access the real true ones, you know? So there you go. That's kind of a long-winded update. Thank you.
Yeah, and if anybody out there wants to check it out, his website is withintheportal.com.
And if I may tell you, I've had some problems with the website and I don't know how to fix it all the time. So life-mind.com is my clinical site where I view my behavioral counseling, my other books, and that's been there a long time. And on the front page of that is also a link to the withintheportal.com site that always works. So yes, withintheportal.com, but also life-mind.com. And you know, again, many of my clients, students come to me for spiritual training, but along the way, they also have behavioral issues, family issues, health issues, mental health disorder. And again, my expertise as a 15-year private practice behavioral specialist sure comes in handy that I can help resolve those things along the way, because we got to manage both. We got to manage our worldly phenomena and our spiritual phenomena.
Absolutely. And of course, the book can be found on Amazon, and he's got a YouTube channel, which is called Within the Portal. And so you pretty much can find Krishnanand and Within the Portal anywhere you're looking if you're using it.
And if I may, again, go to the website, because obviously the paperbacks cost a lot more, and I like them too. I like to have a physical book. But the audiobook and the ebook, I can reduce the price on that. And the other thing is, here's my big plea. I surely shouldn't say this out loud either, but the problem is this. Amazon raked up the price on this book so much because it's a big book It's expensive, and I get like $2 a book. I died for this thing. I get like $2 a book. It's insane, right? And so if you buy the ebook or audiobook, you're gonna get a more personal, intimate experience with the audiobook because it's recorded by me, and you're getting it for less money. And I'm actually gonna make a little something myself too.
Excellent. Yeah, it sounds like any independent creator. I died for this, and you're charging $2. It's like a musician on Spotify. I get 0.0001 cent for every time you play it. Just go directly, get it from the source. Krishnanand's ebook or audiobook at withintheportal.com. Great. Well, if I may start with some questions from our listeners.
Please do. I love that.
One of our listeners, Nicole, asks, now that you've seen what's on the other side, how does that affect the life you live today and your relationships?
Excellent question, and well asked too. Again, understand that I'm an anomaly. I was already very aware and very much in tune with and working with these spiritual phenomena long before. And I'm not just saying like the phenomena, but I was, again, spiritual practices. I mean, I'm a mystic, and so I'm always looking for union. So in many ways, things didn't change, but they did become more intense and more verified. I had no crisis of faith before, never have. And so what I got a lot from my visit within the portal, which is what the dimension that I call it, within the portal, that's the name of the book, is I got it verified. It was validated that what I was doing already was on the right track. And so in most ways, I didn't find anything new with the NDE event and what I was doing with the other side, and even to this day. But what it did do is it enhanced, you could say intensified a little bit more, my intuition. And sometimes I can't like find the volume button and turn it down. Like I'm picking up all kinds of messages and stuff, and I'm like, I don't need this. I'm trying to turn it down. So usually I can turn it down just fine, but certainly it becomes in a lot more clearly and a little bit more emphatically. And other than that, again, this is why there's some emotions there again, because I really care about the students and people that I work with. What they respond to so much is that when I point out something that's very rarely pointed out in the spiritual culture, which is that, again, many people are in the dark night of the soul. And so we're struggling because as spiritual people with spiritual understanding and training, it does make it difficult to manage living in a material world that's superficial and mundane. And we got to do it. We have to be able to function in this material world. And for the first 4 years of my NDE, I could not. I mean, I was so complete. I was 70% on the other side, only 30% here. I couldn't function very well, but yet I did. Miraculously, I functioned at a high level. And so, again, trying to manage the juxtaposition between our material phenomena and our spiritual phenomena. And what I do, what I'm so grateful to be able to do, what I'm honored to do, is help people manage that. Because I got to tell you, I get a lot of people that are somewhat suicidal, and it's not because life sucks. It's because, again, this polarity, this contradiction, this conflict between spiritual awareness and material awareness, they don't sync up very well, And so I get reached out by people that really need some balance in order to find out how to manage that better. Spiritual life doesn't always enhance your material life until you learn how to manage and balance it properly. So in that sense, it changed a lot because my duties went from, as you mentioned in my introduction, I'm semi-retired from behavioral counseling now, and it's still there, it's present, it's available to all people, but what I'm offering almost exclusively is a spiritual training, and that also comes with the behavioral. So the shorter answer summary of that question is that, yes, it has redirected me in a way that my life of service has shifted directions by about 30 degrees. It went from primarily behavioral counseling with some spiritual counseling to all spiritual counseling with a little bit of behavioral counseling.
Very cool. What a blessing this blessing in disguise that whole experience was for you. A question from Darren up in Seattle, Washington. How does your near-death experience relate to traditional spiritual beliefs? He says, this is hard to articulate, so bear with me. How does your near-death experience relate to traditional spiritual beliefs and even to hardcore atheism? Do beliefs really matter when the universe will ultimately reveal itself one way or another? In Christian terms, is everyone saved regardless of beliefs?
I think it's articulated very well. And I understand why it's a challenge because it's a very multi-layered question. There is a single ultimate divine love power. That is God, divine love. Not God doesn't have divine love. God is divine love. And it's perfect and it's ever increasing and it's exponential. Everything, all the religions, all the versions of God, all the gods, goddesses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, are extensions or expressions of this one divine power. So in a sense, I kind of look at it like Mr. Rogers, who would come home during a show and he'd have the suit and tie on, right? And then he would change into the cardigan sweater because he's coming from being businessman to being your friend, right? And that's how I was when I was my office clothes. I would come home to my son and I would change clothes and I'd be dad, you know? And sometimes I'd be tough dad, sometimes I'd be playful dad, depends on what's going on at the time. So all of the genuine, there's not a lot. The few genuine, authentic paths, practices, religions, etc., are from the one singular divine love source, but they're expressed in many different ways. And so, whichever version you're looking at, whatever religion, they're all legit and genuine. But again, as a father, I had different moods. Sometimes I had to be tough with my son when he was growing up. I couldn't be playful dad. And other times I could be playful dad and loving dad. Depends on what the circumstances are. And so all are real. They're all still me. And behind all that, as a father, was always love. I mean, I don't care what I'm doing. If I'm tough on him, it's all truly with sincere love. So the many expressions and extensions are all genuine, and they all come from that singular divine love source. Whatever you call it, whatever name or face it takes, is somewhat irrelevant as long as it allows you, and this is was explained in detail in the book, is that as I went and saw there were many different dimensions of heavens, of hells, of material realms, of spiritual realms, and I was asking this to the akashic-agents. Okay, so there's one for the Buddha, there's one for Allah, there's one for Muhammad, there's one for Jesus, there's one for everybody. And they said, yeah, again, as long as it's genuine, then they all exist simply for one purpose, and that's all God cares about, to bring you closer to divine love. That's it. Any way they can. Whether you got to die, whether you're just going to have a religious experience, whatever it's going to be, whatever is going to be more acceptable to you. So God will take on that form. So the tricky part, it's again, as a spiritual trainer, this is where I come in, is that, again, we live in a convoluted world full of a lot of mixed messages. And there's a lot of stuff out there that's straight up toxic and straight up bizarre and surreal and just is incorrect. We got some cults, you know? And listen, I'm being kind because we're on a public situation here. Some of those cults are some of our worldly religions, okay? That's a fact. And we see these worldly religions change over time and they become more corrupt and they have corrupt parts of divisions of themselves. But at the core of them, the core is their true teachings and about divine love. And so, again, I help people navigate to find their way through the underground stream, to be able to find and seek and attain the true teachings that are there. And there's a quote that I love very much, as Yeshua, Jesus said, seeking ye shall find, knocking it shall be open to you. He didn't say sit on your ass and I'll come to you. He said seeking ye shall find, knocking it shall be open to you. And so when you look for it, and in the Upanishads, in the Vedas and Sanatana Dharma, Hinduism, we say there's a quote that says, when you take one step towards God, God comes running 5 to you. So when you seek with a true heart, then the ability to be able to differentiate between the true and the false, the right and the wrong, and what will work and what won't, begins to be merged to you. And you could say the grace to be able to see the difference, and you get the right ones that are coming your way. So I hope that answers some of the question.
I love that. He's actually in the live chat right now. He just hops on. So if you have any follow-ups to that, if he didn't answer it fully for you, Darren, let us know. But it sounds to me like a lot like what people say, returning to the source.
And if I may say, I'm sorry, if I may say, yeah, my emails are, I'm a very accessible person. You can email me, you can contact me, and you're not going to get some bot that's going to respond. I'm literally going to read your email and reply myself.
Love that. We'll put your email in the show notes for any listeners who want to reach out. Take one step toward Krishnanand, see if he takes 5 toward you. Our next question is from Emily, and she asks, have you been in contact with anyone who has had the same experience or similar near-death experience as you?
Did you just hear my death experience? Are you kidding me? So I respect it. I understand. I'm just playing with you, but obviously she probably typed this question before she even heard some. And again, what I'm sharing with you in that rather long, for just a kind of interview kind of thing, was the brief version. That's the edited version. That's a small part. That's a small set of fractions of the overall, again, miracle after miracle. And so this is what has kind of made me a little bit sought out in the indie community with these podcasts, et cetera, is that, I mean, I won't name names because you have some competitors, but some of these podcast hosts, they do this all the time, and their jaws are open. They're like, oh my God, I have never heard anything quite like this. I mean, this is really, really bizarre. And again, it's documented. I've got the hospital papers. I've got all documented in pictures. I've got a photograph, which I can send you, with me in the hospital. I don't even know who took it because I was in a coma. But so the difficult thing is that, unfortunately, no, I could not relate to anyone in the NDE community either, because no matter what I heard from them was like, well, I'm sorry, but I already knew that. I didn't have to die to go see God. Like, I was already there. Like, I get that, and I appreciate that. Beautiful for you, but I don't have anything to relate to you on. And so I was very isolated in my situation because I was already a developed mystic and spiritualist, and there I was having these bizarre circumstances, one after another. And this goes on with me going up to Seattle. I was up in the Washington area in exile for 3 years, and one thing after another where I am completely on my own in this, and it was very challenging.
That must be tough.
It was unique.
Yeah, I was thinking I think what she meant was like, as far as your experience within the portal, have you been in contact with anyone who has kind of verified or had the same experience within the portal, not necessarily getting, all the medical miracles and everything like that, but your experience on the other side, is it similar? And do you have any peers that you can compare?
Sure. I would say most of the people in the indie community culture are definitely, again, we're all having similar events, that we're going to another dimension, another space. And again, the what do we call the bardo? Again, I refer to it as the portal. It just makes sense to me. The bardo, the portal, purgatory, the in-between state between life and death is where all consciousness goes. All souls go temporarily between lifetimes. And so, yeah, sure. The old indie phenomena is just that. We're there. We're sharing our stories of what we experienced while we were on the other side. And so in that case, there's some very common similarities. Yeah, we all have that. Yes. And it's absolutely beautiful. And again, some of the debate becomes, why is this guy seeing Jesus and this guy is seeing the Buddha? And again, this book resolves all that. And it tells you that God takes on any form that's going to fit for you, as long as it's a genuine form. God has eternal forms. And so again, he's not going to take some cult form. We have plenty of those. But if it's a genuine form, whatever's going to respond to you. I mean, obviously, NDE experiences are everywhere around the world. And so do you think that somebody in India would see Jesus or Shiva?
Right.
And would somebody in rural America see Vishnu, or would he see Jesus? And so has a lot to do with what you're brought up to. And again, these are all genuine, pure divine forms. And so they're all good. Now, are they equal? Well, yes, they're all the same. Every divine form is complete within itself, and it's absolute with a capital A. But they are, again, extensions of different expressions of God. There's the Almighty God power. That is, thou shalt this, thou shalt not that, or I will smite thee, kind of thing. And again, as a father, I got to be that way. I had to be that way with a child sometimes. There's the other end of the spectrum where there's the divine love aspect, which is just, that's when God becomes more playful and more just loving, and it's very intimate.
Yeah. Very good. Now, just kind of piggybacking on that question, I wanted to ask producer Craig, that's why I said, hang around, man, to share his experience that we haven't talked about here on COVE Podcast, but we've talked about in the past on other shows. Mm-hmm. Can you, Craig, tell Krishnanand your story, and then I'd love to hear Krishnanand's thoughts on it.
Absolutely. Years ago, I had a bout of pancreatitis. But of course, I didn't know that. I was able to get myself to the hospital. Um, they checked me out, put me in my, I guess, room for observation. And I woke up apparently 3 days later in the critical care unit of the hospital. And my mom and sister were there when I woke up, saying that I was like this close to death. And that's the reason, because normally I would have just stayed in the regular hospital bed. Now for me, it was as if I was just asleep, because when I woke up, the only thing I remember from being quote unquote asleep was, prior to my waking up, it felt like I was in a war zone in the bed that I was sleeping, or at least what I thought was sleeping. And I hid to the side of the bed, and it was like things were happening all around me. And it just felt like, it felt like a war zone, just the classic movie war zone type of thing. And I just said, what is going on? Why is this happening? And I guess maybe I willed myself to wake up, because then that's when I realized I was in a different place in the critical care unit with a mask on, helping me to breathe. And my mom was just all over me. And again, I thought I was just asleep and had a dream. And then when she told me that I was asleep, or that I was in a coma for 3 days, it blew my mind. And the fact that they said that I was near death.
Craig, were you seeing stuff? Like, were you visually seeing a war zone, or
I was
it
visually
just a
seeing,
feeling?
and what I felt like was experiencing that war zone. But as I said, it to me, after I got into the regular unit in the hospital, I was tired. I fell asleep. But and then all of a sudden, in this 3 day span, apparently all of this happened. And it was just a really odd experience. And I couldn't say whether it was near death, maybe, because apparently I was so close to death. But yeah, it was very, very, it was an experience.
I have, if you allow me, with your permission, I'm getting a flood of intuitive understandings of this as you're talking. I mean, they're all just rushing in. And so, of course, there's also my logical, sensible training, spiritual understanding background that also I get to combine with that. And so, yes, I have a lot of insights and perspectives of this that I think may add some clarity for you if you'd like to hear it.
Yes, please. That would be
Now,
very
understand
nice.
that I want you and your listeners to understand I have permission, because I do not use intuition with people without their permission. Otherwise, it's trespassing.
Understood.
So here's what happens. The chaos war zone that you're feeling. This is the misdirected, jumbling, or not, I wouldn't say jumbling, not yet settled for you, understanding of your own spirituality and your spiritual consciousness. It's not fully very well developed. You haven't spent a ton of time with this, correct?
Pretty much.
Okay, so what's happening there, the war zone, is that your consciousness is very layered. It has many, many levels and layers to it. We're talking infinite lifetimes. We're talking multiple layers of practical, reasonable, logical, worldly, phenomenal, mystical, etc. And so all these are kind of overlaying with each other. They're not exactly smoothing out and letting one just kind of, there's not a flow. There's no synchronicity. Follow me?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. So that's the kind of chaotic war zone sensation. You could say lack of, I'm choosing my words kind of roughly, lack of near-death experience phenomena witnessing, etc. Listen, a lot of the death experience is just rest. I mean, listen, when I was in my coma, the worldly me, I mean, I was just not effing there. I mean, I was just completely dormant. Chitta consciousness, my higher was completely aware, but my worldly self was completely dormant, like not clueless. This is an opportunity. Part of the reason we may have a death experience or near-death experience and not have any retention of it is because we need to rest. Now, there's the other thing. There's retention. I would say almost, if not everyone, 100% has near-death experience phenomena when they have a near-death experience. The difference is many people don't retain it. I retained a lot of mine because, again, I already had years and years and years and decades of spiritual practice. I was already doing Kundalini meditation, Tantra yoga. I mean, I've already been doing this for many years. And so without the right training and experience, it can be hard to retain this. I say in my book that I go into the life preview, the life flashing before your eyes kind of thing, but I didn't just see a life preview. I saw multiple lifetimes, hundreds of lifetimes, over thousands of years. Why? Akashic-agents said to me, well, because you can handle it, because you've already done a lot of this regression work. And so we can give you more if you want it. And I said, yes. And so everyone experiences life review to some degree. Mine was a little bit more enhanced, a little bit more full spectrum. Life preview too. Many people experience life preview where they see what's coming, but few people retain it. So I would say that everyone experiences it. But again, what we retain when we come back, when your consciousness comes back from the ether, from the bardo, from the portal, back into, condenses and distills back into your physical form, it's a very shocking experience. You're talking about an atomic neutron ball amount of power that's being distilled and condensed down into this physical form. And so the baby goes out with the bathwater. So that's why when I woke up from my coma, I did not know who I was. I'm not saying I had amnesia. I didn't have amnesia. I'm saying it was like my identity was deleted. I didn't know who my wife was, over 10 years, who my son was, who was 20 years old at the time. It was life after life. When we reincarnate, and I'm not speaking to it as a theory, it's a real thing, whether you accept it or you'll find out. So when we reincarnate, again, our consciousness is distilled, compacted, compressed to fit into this physical form, and a lot of stuff goes out. So some people retain, some people don't. It depends on how much work we've done. And again, for me, I've done a lot of past life regression, mystical work, spiritual work throughout my life. So I was already automatically kind of able to retain more than most people would retain. But so much of what you're experiencing is when you're getting the rest, you didn't need to be present. What would you need to be aware for? You know, to just sit there and be in horror. I mean, that's a horrifying. If you were aware of it, you'd be like, this sucks.
Right.
I was aware, again, my chitta consciousness was in a sublime place. My worldly consciousness was like, again, I catapulted when I was killed. I didn't hang around, have the out of body experience. Why would I want to see that? It was horrifying. And so the akashic agents design our circumstances that are best for us to protect us. And so some people get heavy, bizarre, and intense phenomena, and some people don't. And listen, a lot of NDEs, which we don't hear much about, have very dark experiences. Very dark, very, very sinister stuff. Now, again, it's not that that's all they see. It's what we retain. And again, the akashic agents have one singular objective: to help you develop and become closer to God and divine love. That's it. And they'll do that any way they can. And so what we experience and retain is what's going to help us with that. And sometimes just rest is it. So the details are worked out with every individual. So everyone's NDE is different because the akashic agents have this plethora of material they can use. Your past life karmas, your current karmas, your consciousness, all the things that you know, all your knowledge from multiple lifetimes. They have all this to choose from their little menu where they can select to be able to arrange them in certain ways that's going to help you develop your consciousness to a higher level from this event. And it sounds like it did. That's the bottom line, is it made you more aware, more sensitive, and a little bit more in depth with yourself and the meaning of life, right?
Yes, I think so.
So even if that's all there is, that's not a small matter, is it? Bottom line is, yeah, you've had a phenomenal experience, and that changes who you are, and anyone you know, anyone that comes in contact with you. again, as a behavioral counselor, listen, I had a lot of families who would say to me, like, we hear sometimes in your session with our son, daughter, whatever, that you guys are just kind of like, talking about stuff, not the presenting issue. And I'm like, yeah, sometimes I want to have rapport with them. And I'm like, look, at the very worst, at the very least, what your loved one is getting is at least over an hour of time spent with a quality, spiritual, deep, mature, sober person. How bad can that be? They're getting to spend time with somebody that is a good influence. We're all influenced by something, by everything that we spend time with. And so at the very least, they're getting influenced by somebody that you can respect, right?
Exactly. Yes.
And so this event for you has changed you, and whatever changes you, you radiate, and it changes other people too. And I'm getting, and I can sense very clearly that this was a bit of a turning point. Maybe not have been a 180 degrees changing event as many NDE kind of things can be, but it was subtle and it was different, and it has changed you. You still remember it, of course, very vividly. And
yes.
Again, everything you are, everything you had for breakfast today, tomorrow, and everything else, you are the sum total of every thought and event of your lifetime to this moment. That's who you are. That's your identity, right? Trust me, when you have no memory, you have no identity, right? And so that's what you are. That's who and what you are. And so who and what you are is radiating off of you. All of us are radiating what we are, which is why sometimes we meet somebody in a room, we say, you know what? I don't know that person, but I don't like them. What do you know what I'm talking about? I don't know. They just rubbed me the wrong way. Yeah. And then other people we meet, we're like, you know what? I know I like them. What do you know about them? I don't know anything about them. I just like them. We like their energy. We like their sincerity, whatever it may be. We're repelled by some and drawn towards others. And we don't always know why. And again, that's a big, very common thing with my students. They honestly are times like, I don't know why, especially because I can be rough on them, I'm not gentle as a teacher. And they're like, I don't know why I was drawn to you. It's just the sincerity and authenticity. We want sincerity and authenticity. And so this has changed you on some molecular and cellular way, and change your consciousness in some way. And these collection of events and the arrangement of them and the magnitude of them was specific for you.
Wow. Makes a whole lot of sense.
It does.
We're almost, our hour is almost up already, and I didn't get to any of my questions, so I guess we're going to have you on for season 3. But before I let you go today, I just wanted to, you mentioned how your body needs rest when you're healing. My mom just brought up a question about resting once you're through the portal, once you're on the other side, because my grandfather, her father, he had a heart procedure and then experienced a major stroke when he was recovering, and the stroke it was catastrophic really, and he then began this journey of getting a little bit better and then having a setback, and then getting better and having a setback, and it lasted about 6 months before he finally perished. But my mother's very into spirituality, and she was speaking with a psychic reader, and the psychic said that Grandpa was on the other side with his mother resting because the last 6 months was such a battle that his spirit needed rest. Yeah. Like, can you just touch on that? Like, our bodies need rest, sure, after a traumatic event, but after fighting for your life for 6 months, once you go through the portal, once you're within the portal, does your energy then need to rest?
Yes and no. In some ways, your soul is divine. It is perfect and unblemished. That's your soul. That's your essence. Your spirit is a blend. It's close to the soul, but it's still separate. And so this is what you could say our spiritual energy, our consciousness, etc. And in some ways, yes. So part of the reason that I was there for those 9 days in the coma, and I was speaking to the akashic-agents and saying, like, when they were saying it's time to go back soon, I'm like, I don't really want to. I mean, it's kind of nice over here. I see what's coming. I don't really want to go for that. And indeed, they did say, and it's quoted, you can quote this in the book, it says, you need to rest. You're going to need it. And so, yes, the dormancy. See, when I was within the portal, when we go there, our ego is reduced to almost nothing. Our desires are gone. We just are consciousness. We're just raw, more pure consciousness. And so we don't have our wants and needs and our agendas and all that. They don't come with us because that's our ego, and that's kind of down in our body. So we get that break, and that's the rest. And that means that our human consciousness, the levels that are worldly, get to completely be dormant and rest. And our spiritual consciousness, which doesn't need quite as much rest in the conventional sense, still also gets to kind of recharge, because let's face it, And the spiritual consciousness is what we're using to manage everything. Even our worldly affairs, again, it's layers. I mean, down here we're in the dense part of the earth, right next to the earth, where things are dense in material. And as a backpacker, when I go up 10,000 feet with backpacking in the Sierras, one of the reasons I love it up there is because the air is very thin and there's no collective consciousness. There's little interference up there. And so again, when there's less interference, we get to clear up and get a little rest and get to stabilize. And that's why we go backpacking in the mountains up to the Sierras, because when I came back, it made me refreshed because I had less interference going on.
Such wisdom. And you can find, as we've mentioned all throughout the episode, we're referring to this book. All the answers are touched on in this book. And thank you so much, Krishnanand. Please, if you are inspired by this episode, go to his website, withintheportal.com, grab his ebook or his audiobook. As Darren mentions in the live chat, he just got your audiobook. And remember that God is divine love. And yeah, I mean, you offered to be a regular. I didn't have to beg and plead. So if you're offering to come back, we'll have you back so you can answer the questions that I have. And it's just so time flies when we're talking to you. You are a spectacular being indeed, miraculous, a walking miracle. And thank you so much for joining us again here in the Cove, Krishnanand.
Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you very much. Thanks everybody out there.
That's Krishnanand. Oh my goodness.
Wow. It's powerful.
Sure.
And what's interesting is, with regards to this episode's poem, actually, it was kind of interesting that I found this. It's the author of this poem almost died in 2023, and he was in the hospital for 10 days, but was out of touch with the world for 8 of those days. So it felt like he was somewhere he didn't belong. But it wasn't his time. And that's where Krishnanand kind of, it also brings that spirituality to this. It was not Krishnanand's time yet, but he had obviously more to do. So this poem was written by Riku Sarashiki, and it coincides with exactly what we experience today and what Krishnanand is all about. It's called On Death's Door.
As interpreted by Craig Jackman.
Death held my head for a short time, my thoughts swirling my head as though they weren't mine. "It's not your time," he spoke, as my feet in the river started to soak. "This was a mistake," he started to add. "They took their eyes off you. You're lucky you lived. Very brave lad." His hands were cold, and I was weak. He waited a minute for me to speak. "Where am I?" I struggled to ask. "On my doorstep," he said, wearing a concerned mask. "You're close to death, so I hold you here, but worry not, because you'll live, my dear. When I let go, remember this: take better care of yourself, because life is precious." It would be days that he held me a spell, but I finally recovered. And we said, farewell.
Say thank you to all of our Cove community Patreon curators: Angelica Bolschweiler, Anna Gina Vola, Charity Swanson, Emily Thatcher, Gina Dobbs, Josepha Snyder, Kelsey Blaine Gibson, Krista King, Meryl Milkey, The Farrens, Susan Kuhn, and of course my lovely wife, Jamie Carganilla. Thank you all for supporting the podcast from day one, helping us continue to go and grow. And until the next one, make each day count.